common knowledge that modern birds are dinosaurs, supposedly the only living descendants from the ancient lineage. Here's what paleontologists do not tell you. Modern bird fossils are found within the Cretaceous period, right alongside T-Rex remains.
They're to survive an asteroid strike. This may not be your first guess, but scientists say the common ancestor of modern-day chickens and ducks did exactly that. The fossil may explain how. Paleontologists have published their findings, which proves, they say, that birds existed in the northern hemisphere alongside the dinosaurs.
A new fossil, which we like to call the wonder chicken, provides us with unprecedented insight into how modern birds survived that extinction event that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs. We've thought for a while that the earliest stages of modern bird evolutionary history took place
with major splits occurring before the extinction of the dinosaurs. Have you ever noticed that in dino documentaries, they never show one modern bird flying in the prehistoric skies? Paleontologists know for a fact birds existed back then. And so let's ask ourselves a question. Why? Why are birds never shown flying the ancient skies and only pterosaurs portrayed? Birds never appear in these films because it goes against the doctrine of macroevolution, the idea of dinosaurs evolving into modern birds over millions of years is a fable and false doctrine. Just because bird feet have a similar look does not mean that dinosaurs turn into birds. Lots of unrelated species have similar physical traits. Scientific data shows that just because different animals share certain characteristics does not mean that they share DNA or genetic. Bring forth life, and the waters to bring forth life.
And man, do they look like a living fossil. I mean, birds date back to the Jurassic. Sometimes people erroneously think that birds evolved after the extinction of the other dinosaurs, but you can't evolve from an extinct lineage. Birds lived alongside the other dinosaurs for the majority of the Mesozoic era. And when you imagine a Jurassic bird, I don't think you'd be far off base to imagine something that looks a heck of a lot like a Hudson. Once you know that feathers were common in dinosaurs, nothing about this bird screams that...
All right.
Termites. Repeatedly, scientists have said how bird-like they are, yet they call them non-avian dinosaurs. First studies classified them as birds right beside Archaeopteryx, but later studies placed them outside the group that contains birds, and the latest studies classify them close to birds again. The name of this new genus is Alnachetri, and it shows how bird-like alvarezsaurs actually were. Based on this new evidence, alvarezsaurs look more like flightless birds, like a weird kiwi or a small cassowary bird. The scientific paper talks quite a bit about alvarezsaur ghost lineage. A ghost lineage means scientists don't have any evidence for what this group of animals evolved from. It's a mystery. What's really crazy is how many of these ghost lineages there are in the fossil record. Tyrannosaurs, stegosaurs, sauropods, hadrosaurs, ankylosaurs, ceratopsians, and many other dinosaur groups don't have ancestors in the fossil record. What's even more interesting is that these same dinosaur families are also called terminal nodes on the evolutionary tree. That means they didn't evolve into anything. Start looking and you'll see these everywhere in the fossil record. A ghost lineage that's also a terminal node. So the actual evolve into anything. Start looking and you'll see these everywhere in the fossil record. A ghost lineage that's also a terminal node. So the actual fossil evidence we can see shows groups of animals with no evidence of evolutionary ancestry? See, evolutionists should expect to find enough common ancestors that the boundaries just disappear. But creation science model predicts distinctive groups with no common ancestors. So which scientific model does the evidence confirm? The evidence fulfills the predictions of the creation science model and doesn't fit the story of evolution. The history in God's Word, the Bible, just makes way more sense of the evidence all around us.
Thanks for watching. This is proof number 4 on the list of the top 10 best scientific facts. Facts which prove we were wrong about the dinosaurs. As you can see, even mainstream scientists agree that it is a huge misconception that dinosaurs eventually, over a long period of time, evolved into modern birds. Stay tuned for proof number 5. Deep sea creatures, living fossils, and the geological column. Proof number 5. Deep sea creatures, living fossils, and the geological column. Everyone is familiar with this timescale, representing the current understanding of the geological column. The problem with this diagram, and what people don't realize, is the mystery creatures down here on the lower layers. They are down here, in the Cambrian era and the Ordovician period. These creatures are very weird looking, and there's a reason for this. They are down there because they are deep-sea creatures, not because they are older. The life forms in this diagram are placed exactly where they were when the flood came.
Of complex life forms went from being impossible to being impossible to ignore. And in the years since then, many more of these weirdos have been described from around the world, from Canada to Namibia to Australia. This collection of creatures became known as the Ediacaran biota, named for they've revealed to us a previously unknown chapter in the history of life. One in which groups of complex, macroscopic, and bizarre organisms diversified and thrived well before the Cambrian explosion. And Charnwood Forest has continued to be an exceptionally valuable window into the life forms of this.
Just look at that. That is a deep sea organism, if I ever seen one.
Frond structure that branched off their central stem that gave them a plant-like appearance, but they weren't plants at all. They lived too deep for much light to reach them, so they didn't photosynthesize. But for much light to reach them, so they didn't photosynthesize. A plant-like appearance, but they weren't plants at all. They lived too deep for much light to reach them, so they didn't photosynthesize. In 2022, scientists reported a new, out-of-place fossil from Charnwood Forest that once again broke all the rules. It was found preserved alongside some rangeomorphs, close to the site where Tina had found the first Charnia. The vast majority of Ediacaran fossils from this period seemed completely alien. This one seemed instantly familiar to some animals living today. Like the rangeomorphs, it probably anchored itself to the sea floor, but unlike those soft-bodied strangers, it had a skeleton, the oldest one ever seen in the fossil record. And it forked into the oldest animal with direct living descendants in the fossil record. The researchers concluded that it was the earliest known cnidarian, a phylum of animals that includes anemones, corals, and jellyfish. Now, cnidarians...
Another fairy tale is the concept of the simple cell. As hard science has proven, there is no such thing as a simple cell. Everything in creation is very complex. So obviously designed, there are multicellular and single-cell organisms. However, even the most singular cell is enormously complex. What most people don't realize is the entire ocean was called Panthalassa, and the one land mass Pangaea, which acted as a single puzzle, made up of the continents we know today.
A closer look at this unique group of marine creatures. The phylum Cnidaria contains around 13,000 living species, surprisingly simple yet beautiful organisms. They are classified based on a number of distinct features. For example, they tend to be radially symmetrical, meaning that their body structures extend outward from the center. They are multicellular and generally consist of simply an internal cavity and a mouth. But cnidarians come in two basic body forms, polyp and medusa, which often occur within the life cycle of a single cnidarian.
It seemed to be a member of the subgroup Medusazoa, making it an ancient jellyfish relative. It closely resembled a life cycle stage common to many medusazoans, during which they form an immobile stalked polyp before eventually becoming free-swimming. Absorbing nutrients from the water, it likely used its tentacles for the same thing modern medusazoans use them for. While the discovery of Charnia unexpectedly showed that large, complex life predated the Cambrian, the discovery of Aurora Lumina went a step further. It showed that at least one recognizable animal group, Cnidaria, was also around during this period, living and diversifying alongside other Ediacaran weirdos, and even the Cambrian onwards. It was an out-of-place fossil in a wider group of out-of-place fossils. While those other Ediacaran species had surprised us by being so weird, this one surprised us by being so familiar.
For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Romans 1 verses 19 to 21. Looking again at this diagram, see with your eyes and hear with your ears, and understand with your minds this very day. The Godhead made all things. In human form his name is Yeshua of Nazareth. We have all been taught, since a little child, about the fairy tales of macroevolution, how these life forms, way down here on the lower levels, are early forms of life, how the animals near here at the top, evolved very slowly over a long period of time, until finally we reach our modern era at the top. The current world understanding of the fossil record is outdated science. Old science. Let your eyes see truth. These life forms at the lower levels are down there because they are deep-sea life forms. Microevolution is a process, like the water cycle, made by the Lord God. When scientists say, "Look what evolution created," the words evolution created, it is an insult to the intelligent designer. I myself get angry on his behalf. When clearly the more research you do into the fossil record, the hard evidence clearly shows these animals all drowned, caught up in a watery, muddy mixture. The quality of the fossil, again, depends on where each animal's location and geographical-wise. On the land and the sea, there was a mass extinction event. It just was not an asteroid the size of a city alone which preserved these creatures. One global worldwide flood. What the fossil record for us to dig up to this day is the flood of Noah. Famous one's mud trap fossil site Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry. Utah's site where multiple meat-eating dinosaurs got stuck in a gooey mud pit, creating one of the largest concentrations of Jurassic predator fossils. 1. The Burgess Shale. Canada, one of the most famous fossil beds in the world, where ancient marine creatures were entombed by underwater mudslides, preserving soft body parts like eyes and internal organs.
Under the right conditions, and we can find evidence of this having happened throughout the world. All those fossils found across the earth are consistent with rapid catastrophic burial, and the sheer magnitude and worldwide scope of them speak of them as the consequence of the global flood described in Genesis 6-9, Noah's flood. When you realize this was a real event, you can understand that the flood would have swept away plants and animals, creating huge amounts of biomass and burying them in waterborne sediments. This would mean many were buried en masse, which would have created huge fossil graveyards, of which we find many around the world. As one example, mixtures of fossils found together of creatures that wouldn't normally coexist in the same environment have also been found in fossil graveyards, like the Messel pit in Germany. Here, fossils of birds, amphibians, reptiles, insects, fish, and mammals are found in the same place. And this once again does away with the old slow and steady evolutionary story that I've been taught. Not only that, but many of the animals in the pit, some of which are extinct while others are just like those we see in present times, are so well preserved they show color, fur, and food in their stomachs, and demonstrate certain activities like pairs of turtles mating when the catastrophic event that preserved them occurred.